In this new test, we will check to see, are vendor payments going to employees? We will relate the address information of the vendor address table to the address information of the employee address table. We will then investigate similar field information and build an expression in the query to find similar addresses. We are suspicious that invoice payments are going to employees' home addresses. We want to check various pieces of information that we have on file for our employees and for our vendors that we use. In comparing our vendor information and our employee information, we might look for exact address matches. We might compare home numbers on file, or we might match up similar city addresses for employees and vendors with post office box numbers for invoice checks or employee paychecks. We might also need to look for address information that is not an exact match but close. In this test, we will not be using a wizard to create our queries, but instead we will be using the Query Design view to design our queries. We will be using multiple tables in the query and then relating them. For our first example, we will compare street information for exact mailing addresses of our vendors and our employees. The table data that we are using will only display street information, not city and state, for privacy considerations. In the query window, we will select New and then the Design View option to create a query in the Design window. We will add the two tables that contain the address information that we want to compare. By either double-clicking on the vendor address table or selecting it and clicking Add, we can add this table first, and then we will do the same for the employee address table and close the Show Table box. Displayed are the two tables we selected above the empty Query by Example grid. Access has related these two tables on the similar named field of ID. This is not the relationship that we need for our exercise. We want to compare the address information of the vendor and employee tables. To undo the relationship that is present, we will click on the join line between the two tables and press the Delete key on our keyboard. The link has been deleted. To relate these two tables on the address fields, we will drag with the mouse the address field from one table to the second table. It doesn't matter which table we select first to relate the two similar fields. The type of relationship that is now established is called an inner join. If we double-click on the join line between these two boxes, a dialog box pops up. The box tells us that this join only includes rows where the join field from both tables are equal. With this join, only records with the exact same matching address information will be displayed in our results datasheet. Now we will add the table fields to the Query by Example grid that we want to display in our datasheet results view. We will double-click on the vendor number field, the vendor address field, and the employee address field. To run this query, we will click the Run button located on the Query toolbar. The datasheet view displays 8 records with matching addresses. Notice the exact same information in both the vendor address field and the employee address field. This was a very easy query to perform. Another very easy query would be to link a vendor table and an employee table on their phone number fields and query to see if there are similar phone numbers. In a third query, you might link on the city field in both vendor and employee tables. with the street information for both tables added to the Query by Example grid. By linking on the city field, all records in the first table for one city will be matched up with all records in the second table with a similar city. You would have to visually compare the address information to see if there were records in question. An example might be an employee address in a city where there is a post office box in the same city for the vendor mailing address, or vice versa. Without further investigation, this type of match might just be a coincidence. We'll now return to our first address query to make a change. From the Query Results window, we can return to the Design view by clicking on the first button on the toolbar. This query finds exact street address matches. If the same street address information was typed differently in either of the vendor address or the employee address tables, Access wouldn't have located these similar addresses. We'll make a change to the link of these tables and criteria that will match just the left characters of the address fields. This way, if in one table a part of the street address is abbreviated, it may still match up with a record in the other table. First, we will eliminate the link between these two tables. I'll click on the Join line between the tables and press the Delete key on the computer keyboard. Running a query with multiple tables without a relationship between the tables is not usually done. Without a link relating these two tables, Access would match every record in the first table with every record in the second table. However, we will establish criteria that will minimize the number of records that will be related from one table to the other. The left string function will be used in finding any similar records where the left characters of the address field match. To add the criteria, we will click in the Criteria row in the Vendor Address column. We will use the Expression Build button to help us build our expression. The Build button is located on the Query toolbar. When you use this option, a dialog box pops up that supplies us with tools for building an Access expression. The left column is where we will find formulas that we can use in Access. We double-click on the Functions folder, and then on the Built-in Functions folder to locate a text function that will look at the left characters of a text field. We locate the left function and double-click on it to add it as part of our expression. If you know these Access expressions, typing in the expression into the Query Criteria row might be easier than locating and selecting the expression here in the Build dialog box. We'll continue with the selection process to tell Access that we want to compare the left characters of the vendor address field with the left characters of the employee address field. We will click in the String Expression piece of the left formula and locate the vendor field in the vendor address table. By double-clicking on this field, we have added it to the left formula. We will enter the number 8 to the number position to complete this first formula. We want this formula to be equal to a similar formula that looks at the employee address field and finds the left 8 characters. We will click the Equals button and then again select and add the left string formula after the equal sign. This time we will enter the employee address field from the employee address table and enter once again the same value of 8 in the formula. Now the expression is complete. Access will compare the left 8 characters of the vendor address field to see if the characters match the left 8 characters of the employee address field. We click OK and we are returned to the query design view. The entire expression is pasted into the criteria row in the vendor address column. We are now ready to run our query to see if there are matches of the left characters of the 2 address fields. We will run the query with the Run button and view the results. There are 23 similar addresses between these 2 tables. There had been 8 exact matches, but many more addresses that are similar. Notice that some of the addresses have abbreviations in one table, but not in the other. This query, though a bit more complicated than the previous ones, was able to locate similar record information in 2 tables that was not recognized in the simpler query version.